Greece is a country that has fascinated the world for centuries with its ancient history, literature, philosophy, art, and culture. It's the birthplace of democracy, Western civilization, and the Olympic Games. However, it's also a country that's faced some of the worst financial crises in modern history and has struggled to recover and reform its economy and society. Over the course of the past decade, Greece's economy has been on a rollercoaster ride, with a debt crisis that shook the country and a sluggish but steady recovery in recent years. But with high growth, debt reduction, and increased investment, Greece's economy has outperformed most European countries in the last 2 years, and Greece is no longer the black sheep of the European family. However, despite promising signs of growth, the country still faces challenges in maintaining its reform momentum and achieving sustained economic progress. And its citizens still can't afford basic goods. So let's explore Greece's economy.
Well, first of all, I'm happy to report that the Greek economy has proven particularly resilient. We will have significant growth rates for 2023. I expect growth in excess of 2%, and my goal has always been to significantly exceed the Eurozone average growth, and I think this is a success.
Greece is a small but strategically important country in Southeast Europe, with a population of about 10.7 million people and a GDP of about $239.3 billion. It's a member of the European Union and the Eurozone, which means it shares the euro as its currency with 18 other countries. Greece is also known for its rich history, culture, and natural beauty, attracting millions of tourists every year. This birthplace of democracy and a cradle of civilization has experienced both prosperity and hardship throughout the ages. So before we delve into the recent economic status, let's take a quick trip back in time to truly understand its economic trajectory. At the beginning of the 20th century, Greece was emerging from a complex history of wars and politics. The economy was mostly agrarian, with a focus on subsistence farming and small-scale production. This limited industrialization hindered economic growth, and the nation struggled to overcome poverty and underdevelopment. But then the mid-20th century marked a period of transformation for Greece. Industrialization gained momentum, particularly after World War II. The economy diversified into manufacturing, textiles, and mining. Greece had an astonishingly high average growth rate of 7.7% from 1950 to 1973. It was only second to Japan at the time. However, political instability and economic challenges continued to impede progress, and by the latter half of the 20th century, Greece's economy underwent further changes. The tourism sector began to flourish and become a pivotal source of revenue and foreign exchange. However, by the end of the 20th century, Greece's economy faced some serious issues. The Greek government pursued expansionary fiscal and monetary policies in the 1980s. Instead of boosting the economy, the country experienced high inflation, large budget and trade deficits, low growth rates, and exchange currency issues. Moreover, corruption and tax evasion were rampant, contributing to budget deficits and growing public debt. Public spending further outpaced revenue, leading to mounting debt and economic instability. Fast forward to the modern era, Greece embarked on a significant milestone by joining the Eurozone in 2001. And suddenly, Greece was viewed as a safe place to invest, lowering the interest rates that the Greek government was compelled to pay. The adoption of the euro brought numerous benefits, including increased trade, investment, and access to a larger market. In fact, the decision to join the Eurozone was rooted in the desire to stabilize the economy and integrate with the European Union. For most of the 2000s, the interest rates that Greece faced were similar to those of Germany, which allowed it to borrow goods and services relatively cheaper. However, the country did not deal with its deep-seated fiscal problems. Although being in the Eurozone helped Greece's government borrow money more easily and cover its expenses when taxes weren't enough, but using the same currency as countries like Germany showed a big difference. Also, Greece wasn't as good at making things efficiently, so its products and services weren't as appealing as Germany's. This caused Greece to not earn as much compared to what it spent, making its money troubles bigger. So Greece's journey to the Eurozone in 2001 initially brought economic growth and development, but little did they know that rough seas awaited them. High public spending, insufficient tax collection, and mounting public debt exposed vulnerabilities in the Greek economy, and the storm clouds of the global financial crisis loomed on the horizon. And in 2009, Greece faced its most severe economic challenge, triggered by the turmoil of the worldwide Great Recession. Greece faced a sharp decline in economic activity, rising unemployment, and a growing budget deficit. The country's debt-to-GDP ratio also became a growing concern. In fact, in 2010, US financial rating agencies stamped Greek bonds with a junk grade. As capital began to dry up, Greece faced a liquidity crisis, forcing the government to seek bailout funding. And Greece received bailout packages in 2010, 2012, and 2015 from the International Monetary Fund, Eurogroup, and the European Central Bank. So Greece didn't stay down for long. Through a series of tough reforms and international assistance, the country managed to stabilize its economy and embark on a path to recovery. Structural reforms were implemented to address issues such as tax evasion, corruption, and inefficiencies in the public sector. However, these measures applied amidst the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression proved to be one of the largest factors attributing to Greece's economic implosion. The adjustment process was very painful for the Greek people and the economy. Many young and skilled workers left the country in search of better opportunities abroad. The political landscape also changed dramatically, with the rise of new parties and coalitions that challenged the traditional establishment. The country faced a severe financial crisis and was on the brink of defaulting on its debt in 2015. In fact, it became the first developed country to fail to make an IMF loan repayment on time. Greek citizens voted against additional EU austerity measures in July 2015. Afterward, Greece began to recognize improvements in its economy. In 2018, the nation exited its last bailout program, lowered taxes, and elected a new prime minister who vowed to reward the nation's citizens, investors, and businesses. And its GDP went from negative 10.1 in 2010 to 1.8 in 2019. Unfortunately, as of 2020, its GDP dropped back into negative 9. As the Greek economy was among the most severely hit by the COVID-19 crisis in the EU, but it recovered swiftly. Now, coming towards the current status of Greece's economy. After a decade-long debt crisis, Greece's economy is on a path of cautious progress. The country has managed to minimize its budget deficit, and economic growth has been consistent, if not as robust as desired. The Greek Economic Recovery Plan for the post-COVID-19 reality, titled Greece 2.0, has also been announced, with the European Investment Bank pledging to oversee a total of €5 billion. Greece's economy has performed strongly in the past years. Inflation in Greece in 2022 sat at 9.3%. Unemployment in Greece in 2022 sat at 11%. It was 14.7% in the year 2021, 16.31% in 2020, and 17.31% in 2019. GDP has returned to pre-pandemic levels, helped by effective government support, a revival in tourism and exports, and improved investor and consumer confidence. Although the numbers are thriving in Greece, but as it's often the case in economies, the reality is quite different, because at the same time, Greek consumers are forced to cut their purchases of basic goods to deal with a wave of continuous price hikes. According to the new OECD analysis, Greece's excellent economic recovery from the COVID-19 crisis is being tested by rising gasoline and food costs, as well as increasing global uncertainties. The government has offered tax concessions to encourage mergers and farming cooperatives, but the benefits have been eroded by energy inflation, and farming is at a high risk as well, being vulnerable to market shocks as well as weather. In fact, Greece's economic growth is expected to drop to 1.1% this year because rising energy costs and ongoing uncertainty about the Ukraine crisis dampen consumption and investment. So to continue the recovery, the country must allocate public spending, boost public revenues, improve labor market functioning, and maintain efforts to create a more dynamic business sector. As we wrap up our journey through Greece's economic progress, let's reflect. How do you envision Greece's future path? We're eager to hear your insights. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this voyage of knowledge with your fellow explorers. Until next time.